Hello, I'm Bretton, one of our MCAT tutors here at Inspira Advantage, where we help students get into medical school and other professional programs. Today in MCAT Bites, we're delving into the mechanisms of hormone action, specifically comparing steroid and peptide hormones. This is a topic you will 100% encounter on the MCAT, so you want to pay close attention and pay attention to the details here as well. Let's start off by just talking about hormones broadly. Hormones are the body's chemical messengers. They play a vital role in regulating physiological processes. They can be broadly categorized into two types of hormones: steroid hormones and peptide hormones. Understanding the differences between these two is absolutely crucial, not just for the MCAT, but also for your future medical career. Steroid hormones are lipid soluble, which means they can pass through a lipid membrane. They're also all derived from cholesterol. On the other hand, peptide hormones are all made from amino acids. They are water soluble, meaning they can't just diffuse right across the cell membrane without a little bit of help, meaning they're not membrane permeable. Now, let's dive a little bit more into steroid hormones. I want you to think of them as the stealth agents of the body due to their lipid-soluble nature. So I drew it as kind of this stealthy spy-looking guy. These can slip through the cell membrane. You can see he's kind of phasing through the cell membrane here. This allows the steroid hormone to then directly interact with intracellular receptors. Let's kind of see what this looks like. So I'm going to draw our cell membrane here in white. Let's say we've got our steroid hormone out here. And like we were saying, this can just diffuse right across the cell membrane. Now let's represent this just by a triangle. So this is our steroid hormone. The steroid hormone will then dimerize with another steroid hormone, typically in the cell. So these are going to come together. Dimerize just means that these two guys are going to become a dimer, a two. Let's draw this. So still our same two triangles. And once we have this change, it can go across the nuclear membrane. Once inside the nuclear membrane, what do you think it's going to do? Well, inside our nuclear membrane, we have good old DNA. So it's going to bind to the DNA, acting as what we call a transcription factor. And this is going to cause some sort of genes to be transcribed. This will lead to long-term changes in the cell's function. Examples of steroid hormones you'll want to know for the MCAT are cortisol, estrogen, and testosterone. Now for the MCAT, remember that the action of steroid hormones is going to be slow and prolonged. It's going to be prolonged due to the mechanism of altering gene transcription. And it's going to be a little bit slow because it takes a while for these genes to go from being transcribed into mRNA to being processed to eventually being a protein that does something. Now, I want to ask you just to see, now let's do a quick knowledge check. How might a lipid-soluble hormone like cortisol affect a target cell? Well, let's talk through this. Cortisol will pass through the cell membrane, bind to its intracellular receptor, and then the resulting complex will then alter gene expression, leading to long-term changes in the cell's function. Again, the exact same mechanism we're showing down here. Just label the steroid for you. All right, now let's talk about peptide hormones. As you can see, much less stealthy. In fact, it's a law-abiding mailman. And the only way a mailman is going to get into your house is if they knock on the door and ask, just like peptide hormones. There needs to be something in place to allow the peptide hormone or the mailman through. A door or a membrane channel, a receptor for the peptide hormone. And this is all because those peptide hormones can't pass through the lipid membrane. They need to bind to a receptor on the surface. This will trigger a cascade of intracellular events, sometimes involving second messengers like cyclic AMP, and this results in a fast but short-lived response. For the MCAT, classic peptide hormones you need to know are insulin and glucagon. For the MCAT, I also want you to focus on understanding how these hormones are used in second messenger systems for rapid cellular responses. While you don't need to memorize exactly what is going on in terms of secondary responses, just know that they're happening. That's pretty much all the MCAT wants you to know. So then let's do a quick concept check here. How does a water-soluble hormone like insulin exert its effects on a target cell? Well, we know that insulin can't enter the cell, so it's going to bind to a receptor, an insulin receptor. This will then cause some sort of cascade of events inside the cell involving second messengers, maybe cyclic AMP. Who knows? Not me, and you don't need to know for the MCATs. Don't worry about it. And this will then lead to the cell's response, which will be increased glucose uptake. Let's compare the two. Grasping the mechanisms of hormone actions is absolutely vital for your MCAT successes. Now let's compare the two. Steroid hormones have a direct long-term action on gene expression, while peptide hormones act quickly through secondary messenger systems, but have short-lived effects. On the MCAT, you'll need to identify these differences and understand the physiological implications. Remember that hormones are key players in numerous body functions, and their mechanisms of actions are a fundamental concept in biology. The three big key takeaways I need you to take away from this are that steroid hormones are lipid-soluble and alter gene expression for prolonged effects. The other thing you need to know is that peptide hormones are water-soluble and use second messengers for rapid short-term actions. Thank you so much for watching our video on this overview of hormones, and I will see you next time.